All right, guys, welcome to the Rusty Hook Kayak Fishing Podcast. It's Tuesday night, the 26th of March. Got a great show for you. Let's kick it off.
You're watching the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. Welcome to the Rusty Hook Podcast, presented by Feelfree Kayaks. Paddle, pedal, or power, there's something for everyone. ZPRO Lithium, serious power for serious anglers. DuBro Fishing, American marine application and soft plastics. Big Lake Bait Company, Texas's #1 custom bait maker. Raw and unfiltered. Streaming on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Bringing you gear reviews and candid interviews from the industry's best. Angler profiles, tournament news, and legendary knowledge from kayak fishing's best. Grab that cold drink and get settled in. Now here's John Rapp, our host.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. Just setting up my screens there for my brother Kyle. I was throwing up his Facebook page, getting ready to roll it up. But I got a great show for you tonight. Just got back in late last night from Oklahoma. Had a great time out at the Bassmaster Class in Tulsa. But the gentleman I'm going to bring on, I believe, had a much better time than I had. But he had to work for it. He had to study for it, and that's why this show is coming on tonight. Is want to pick his brain and share with you the techniques and the studying habits, the methods to his madness. I've known Kyle for several years. He's a part of the fishing team with Feelfree, and I've spent time with him in a cabin before. I know how hard the guy works. So when he was told that he was going to walk the stage because he finished in the top 10, I was never more happy for a guy in my life because I know he earned it. So without further ado, I want to bring on my good friend, Kyle Strother. Kyle, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Big Daddy. What's going on?
Not much, brother. So, I tried to do a little smoking there, trying to blow a little smoke about my brother from another mother, Kyle, here, and tell those folks a little bit about you. But before we get deep into your mind, let's tell them a little bit about you, where they can find you on your socials, and if you want to give a little shout out to some of the people you work with in the industry, and we'll start off that way. So let her rip, brother.
Well, I want to start off by saying your introduction, like the original, like the first couple seconds, that is awesome. You've done a great job with that. It looks super cool. And
I appreciate
the rock music, I dig it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Kyle Strother. I live in Morgantown, West Virginia. And what all did you want to know again, John? I was totally about your intro.
Well, I'm glad that I can throw off, a study man, a man of great mind and technique and thoughts like yourself. But no, just, hey, let these dudes that are watching, let them know a little bit about you, where they can find you and check out, some of your past events, your YouTubes, your Facebooks, Instagram, all your socials.
Yeah, I've been on YouTube for a long time now. You can find me at Catching with Kyle, with no G at the end of Catching, because there is a Catching with Kyle, and he's a hammer too. But don't get us mixed up. But you might want to check him out as well. And you can also find me on Instagram, and I have a TikTok and a Facebook page, all Catching with Kyle. So you can find me across all those platforms. I think Instagram has this new Threads thing. And I haven't got the grasp on that yet. I don't think it's really taken off, but I'm exploring that because nowadays you got to be an early adopter of all these technologies. And I've always been a late adopter, and that's something I gotta get ahead of. Got to get ahead of the curve on that.
I hear you, man. The intros and stuff. I've been working with one of our teammates, Randy Newton, and we've been using that program called Canva. So you guys out there, if you're looking for something to use to build your YouTube thumbnails, some videos for your shows, that they have it. Go check it out. Sign up with Canva. It's a good little program. They have a free version where you get to use some templates that, they're just average. Then you can pay a little subscription fee and get a little bit more in depth, more quality and stuff like that. So anyway,
that wasn't a plug. That wasn't a plug, but we
no,
segued right into it. That was
yeah,
not planned.
And by the way, we are not sponsored by Canva, but hey, Canva, reach out to us. We'll work with you. No, so speaking of working with you, to tell people who you work with out in the industry, if you have any sponsors you want to shout out and thank, and that have been supportive to you and things like that.
Well, I'm pretty particular about my sponsors, and I really only have the one that I have a solid relationship with, and that's Feelfree Kayaks, and you and Roland on the team, and a lot of the team members. They're all super supportive of me, and they help me out with these tournaments a lot. And when I need parts, they always hook me up with those. At a pretty good rate. So, and they get them out super quick. Like if I break a rudder or like a cable or something, I'm like, oh man, I got a tournament coming up, John Wicks. Can you hook me up, man?
Yeah, he's the man. Yeah.
But I said I'm probably the neediest member on that team, and
we have great customer support down there, no doubt. I mean, those guys, they're top notch in North Carolina. Asheville, Feelfree Kayaks, gotta love those boys. Hey,
I haven't visited that location yet. I got to go down there sometime.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that they just recently did their unveiling of their new waterways where they moved to. Man, that looked nice. So Asheville has a new waterways, which is a dealer for Feelfree. It's a great kayak shop, but it looks they did a killer job. Jim and them. I even talked to Roland today. He flew in, was there for all that grand opening stuff. It looks nice. So
it's not too far of a trip, really. I should make a trip down sometime and spend the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going down next week. I'm going to go down and get a Moken 10, Moken 12.5 for that Hobie BOS pedal only tournament on Lake Norman. So I'm going to have a fresh, brand new 12.5 to break in and go out and catch slime with some big spots.
What color are you getting?
I'm going to get that dark gray. Hey, we got a few comments here. Let's see what we got here, brother. We got our boy Mike Ridner in the house, and I think he's talking about you, not me. I know I'm not that, but you are. You are.
Michael's angel too.
Yeah, he is. He definitely is. Good evening, brother. We got our boy Nicholas from Florida. So speaking of a hammer right there, Nicholas Beltran wears out those big. What are those bass down there? What are they called? Those Florida bass that have those funny looking.
Oh, peacock.
Peacocks. Yeah, that's it. Peacock. He is Peacock King right there. And hey, Nicholas, congratulations with your pickup with Bonafide, man. I'm happy for you. It's well deserved. So, and anyway, yeah. Hey, Kyle, let's get into this, brother. We got about 14 folks, man. Y'all hit some comments. Yeah. Show us some love. Shout out to Kyle. But let us know who you are, your questions, because now we're going to dig into miles and miles deep into Kyle's brain. Study habits, man. See that check in the background? That wasn't fluke. That was study work to get to that 7th place. Lead into your study what you did before you even hit the road to go out to Tulsa.
Man, it started months ahead. We might dive real deep, but I'll bring it back at some point, and you'll be kind of surprised where this conversation is going to go. But yeah, it started once I realized I qualified to the Maryland State Championship, and I only had a few months to get prepared. And first of all, it started with I just recently had that exercise article because I was having so many like pains in my elbow, my shoulders, my back from a whole season of fishing. I'm like, listen, I got to get this under control. I got to rehab my body before this new season kicks off. And I'm a little sore. I was a little sore today, but it was good during the tournament. So it really all starts with that physical and mental rehab, getting yourself in the right state of mind for the coming season. And
that 14-hour drive made you sore.
Yeah, my back was killing me at the end. Yeah, I always put my kayak cushion. Sometimes I sit on that.
Hey, Brandon Elrod, that was a shout out to you, brother.
But then, I like to start with Facebook pages. There's all kinds of groups for different lakes that we go and visit on these trails, and they're public pages. You might have to apply to join them, but that's just to keep all the bots out, because you know how bad it is even on a Feelfree page. It's constant.
Right.
So they are public pages, and we are allowed to look at those. But that's a good starting point. You can go back in time and see, what kind of size fish and what fish are people catching in the time that you're going to be at a lake. And a lot of these lakes will have local tournaments, and they post on the results on there to give their local anglers some press, and so that way other people in the community can see, the tournaments that are going on. You got to get an idea of what kind of weights will take to win a tournament at different types of lakes at different times a year. So that's something you definitely want to check out, and that's something I did almost immediately. And then you have to do some math to 20-pound bag is what, 85 inches for a kayak angler. So you have to kind of figure out, okay, if I'm going to 10 killer, I'm going to need a certain length of fish to compete. So when I go to practice, I need to find this type of fish. 14 inchers, not going to cut it. 15 inchers, not really going to cut it. You're going to have to find something bigger. And that's usually the case for most places, but you can kind of get an idea. For 10 killer, I think, it usually takes 20 to 25 pounds to win local derbies. And they have people coming in from Arkansas and Texas for their events a lot of times. So that's a good place to start are the Facebook pages.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm showing here now. While you were talking a little bit about your details there, I went through and showed folks a little bit about your photographs of the fish that you caught and you displayed on your page during the event. So your study, what other things did you use other than Facebook groups did you go to learn more about the lake? You also obviously you learned some of the past tournament history and what it took to win. Did you do any other type of studying?
I think it's a pretty standard procedure for people to go to YouTube and use YouTube as a resource for these events. And they can be a good resource, but they can also lead you astray. I know everyone watched all 4 days of the Bassmaster Live 2019 at 10 Killer, and you didn't have to watch them because it was 20 some hours worth of film. But if you did watch, the fishery has changed. They were a lot smaller back then, but you knew that they were going to grow bigger by 2024. And but you could see, and it was a different time of year. It was in October, so it's not really the same as in spawn mode in March. But what you can do is you can lay eyes on the water. They have cameras all over the lake. You can see what it looks like. I've never been there. I want to take a look. I don't care really what they're catching them on or where they're catching them on, or where they're catching them at. It was more about what does the lake look like and what kind of fish can I expect from it, and what can I take mentally from those tournaments. Chris Zaldane had an excellent event, I think top 5 at 10 Killer in 2019. And, he was slaying these big smallmouth, and all my friends were talking about, man, I want to do that, and they got all the tackle for that. And it never really played out. But what I took from him was his ability to adapt and fish the moment and let the fish tell him what was going on rather than forcing a bite, because he started out really slow on that 10 Killer event. And eventually he just built up and adapted throughout the tournament to where he finished in the top 5. He did really well. And so that's something you can take from those larger events. If you find those kind of videos for the lake that you're going to, you can do that. There's also all kinds of videos from local kayakers, local bass guys. Some of them, you can maybe pick something up here and there. You can lay eyes in certain areas, what certain ramps look like, just to give you an idea, like I said, ahead of time, what the area is going to look like and whether or not that area fits your style of fishing. And I think that's probably the most important thing is you got to find a place that fits your style.
I hear you. Maps. What kind of maps did you use on this occasion? Did you have a big fold-out map like you did at Gunnersville last year with highlighted ramps, highlighted structures, notes, and things like that? Or did you use something more digital this time?
Well, first of all, that wasn't my map, and we shouldn't be talking about that map. That is top secret. Jerry's going to get very mad at me. Um,
Okay, that was Lady Lake, or which lake was that again?
it was
It,
Toho down in Florida.
so
But
did you go digital this time, or did you go buy a map and then do that type of scratching
no,
out and researching and?
I always do digital. A few years ago, before the KBS National Championship in Gunnersville, I actually got the Navionics app, and I paid for the upscale version too, just because the contour lines are way more detailed, way more accurate than the free version. You're really not getting a whole lot with the free version at all, and that's how they get you. That's how they get your money, and that's how they got my money. It's not really a plug, but I think it's something that if you're serious about it, it's something that you're going to need to do. And there's been times on a few events just using the Navionics app on my phone has really helped me narrow down spots like, oh, there's this cool underwater point over here, a point over there I want to check out.
Right.
And it really helps out a lot to start narrowing things down for you. But I also use Google Earth on my old laptop that barely runs anymore. It still crashes. I spent probably, I don't know, maybe 30 hours doing just scanning over the old historical maps on Google Earth, looking for low water years where the actual image quality is decent enough where you can see something close and zoomed in. And I scoured that map and dropping waypoints all over the place. And what I would do is after that, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can transfer from Google Earth to your graph or to your phone, your Navionics app. But that's kind of difficult. I'd rather just pull up my app and pick up the waypoints through there, and it kind of saves me time to do it that way. But speaking of my old computer, it crashed one day before I saved all those waypoints, lost everything.
Oh, dang.
So like a week before the event, yeah, I had to start back and do it all over again. And I think, it gave me a new mind, like, okay, this is what I want to look for. These, I can start fresh. And I did start fresh. I added a whole bunch of new waypoints. I put them on my Navionics app on my phone. And, even when I got on the water, I was able to pull up that Navionics app and put them in my graph, or just pull up the phone and look at it like, okay, there's a spot up here I want to check. And I've done that at other lakes too. Cabo, it helps navigation, especially in the dark going through a swamp. And some graphs, like I have a Lowrance TI7, TI9. The map's okay, but it doesn't have the detailed contour levels that the Navionics app does. So I was really following the Navionics app on my phone rather than on my graphs. Yeah.
Says, looks like that's the setup you got right there. Looks like you have it center mounted on your battery box.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I have it center mounted. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't like it hanging off the side because I'm afraid I'm going to get my line wrapped around it fighting a fish, or if I try to go net it, it'll bump into it. So I try to keep everything centered.
It makes sense. Yeah, I got that. I mean, I was looking at how one of the newer guys had posted looked like one of those robot arms where he had it centered on his pod. I would think it was Justin, one of our newer team members, but
yeah, I wouldn't mind a different system to where I could some kind of RAM mount where I could move it closer to me, because I do have to reach out, and when I'm marking waypoints on there, I do have to stretch out a little bit. And if it was closer to me, maybe I would mark some more waypoints. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we got our local new store that's down at Golly Bridge, right there by Kanawha Falls. They're actually having a tournament on May 18th, fellas. If you're looking for a tournament here local, but they're a brand new store. Sell DuBro and other good stuff. They also sell live baits. If you're looking at their page here lately, they've been selling a lot of their catfish gear for those boys going up above the falls, trying to catch some of them big hammers on the bottom. But they got a good point here. Some people just don't realize and how much work that you have to do prepping for a tournament, and especially for us guys that are traveling out of state. We're not familiar with the locations.
John, it's different for everybody. There's some people out there that can wing it, and they do better without having the preconceived notions in their head. And then there's people that need a little bit more help, like myself. So you can do all the prep in the world, and it might not do anything for you other than spin you out if you don't know how to use that information correctly.
That's the truth. And his ears must have been burning. I think, Justin, we were just talking about you. We were thinking about your setup that on your boat that you had with that arm on the middle of your boat with your graph. But yeah, Kyle is the man.
I am.
Hey, Kyle, let's take a quick break, buddy, and we'll be right back. And guys, we're going to do a little promo. I want to talk to you about some stuff that we got going on with the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. If you're not familiar with it, let's get you familiar with it, because I've been on the phone today with Richard DeVry down at Eastport Marina. If you guys know where Del Holla Lake is, world-class smallmouth, we're holding a 2-day tournament down there, and I want to remind you of the dates, times, and locations. Yep. Put that on your calendar. We're only a month away, and you can sign up on TourneyX. It's a $100 entry fee, which covers your big bass fees. And as of today, I can guarantee you $1,500 a day for the big bass pot. I talked to Richard DeVry. We're going to have dinner on us. He's going to have dinner down at the resort, Eastport Marina, and free for you guys. It's going to be a good event. You need to look into it. We hope you can come. And also, $50 a night for the lakeside bedding. Let me show you a little bit about that. If you want to get ready to screenshot this, I have a phone number and stuff like that. See where you can stay right on the water, $50 a night on the houseboats. So there's 5 houseboats. One houseboat is already filled up. And I know others have reservations, but you need to get down there. You're looking at the marina there as I'm turning off, and that's where all the awards and banquet and stuff like that's going to be. So, again, we'd love to have you guys show up and hang out with us. Outstanding, Brian. You're going to love it. I know you'll be there. Talk to Big Jack Gillespie. He's going back down for, I think, the 4th year in a row. We have it's an absolutely great time. You're out in the middle of God's nowhere. I mean, if you want to get away, just take a break, get away from everything. I really believe you'll enjoy this. So anyway, enough about me. Let's bring back on my brother from another mother, Kyle Strother, and let him do some more talking about research techniques. And now we can probably get into some of his pre-fishing and what he did to eliminate water, baits, and so forth. Welcome back, Kyle.
Yeah. Hey, John, I got a question for you. Did you slide down one of those slides and try to land in your kayak? Did you do that? You
know what? I bet we could probably put money up and get somebody to do that.
That would be sweet. I heard from a couple people at that event was like one of the best ran and like most fun, relaxed event of last year, and that's really cool.
That's one of the things that we strive for, is that it's it ain't a grassroots event. It's got that big tournament stage feel, but yet it feels, and it pays out that way, but it still has a grassroots feeling like a local club. And that's what we're aiming for. And the other thing is that Tennessee Bass Nation is going to be there the first day. So that first day it's a 1-day tournament for them. But all those guys will probably sign up for the PNF tournament, where it's a 2-day tournament, so they have a shot at that big bass money as well. So, but yeah, hey, see, we got a couple more comments. We got Mikey, amazing fishery. Yeah, he hammered them. I think he caught his personal best smallmouth down there last year. Then Gillespie can tell you, $100, $100 if you do. Hey. Oh, shoo. I may have to bring me a little bit of beverage, a little liquid courage for that event, buddy. And then we've got Daniel Wilcock, or Blaine. That's Blaine there from West Virginia. He's reaching out to you, Kyle, and giving you congrats. George's Daniel Wilcock says good evening. So thank you, Dan. Great show. He's got that show that he does is. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it right now, but it's got some mean ass intros. Talking about another guy like you, Kyle, that does his homework and for his stuff. He does a lot of good work there. And then Sierra, of course. What a hammer right there. She's proud of you, bro, like the rest of us. So anyway, hey, hey guys, stop commenting. You're making the show too interactive, and I can't ask Kyle questions. No, bring them on.
You're helping the algorithm too much. You can't be helping the algorithm. We got to keep the show down low.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this is awful. But hey, man, so you made that 14, 15-hour drive, and how many days did you get on the water to do a little pre-fishing?
I mean, yeah, I guess you could say 3. I left here in Morgantown about 10 a.m. on Saturday before the event. And I drove probably about 12 or 13 hours all the way out to Missouri. Our B&B didn't open up till Sunday. So, I wanted to hit the water early Sunday morning before the B&B opened. And I didn't want to sit at a ramp there in Oklahoma. Right. I don't know the ramps, if they're safe or not. So Mark Edwards actually suggested I stop at a Best Western and sleep there. So I found a place in Missouri that I pulled up to a Best Western, and they had a big gravel lot with a trailer, and there's another tractor and trailer in there. And I parked beside them, and I got about 4 hours of sleep. I brought like a little mini pillow for me to hit my head on for a minute, and use my neck gaiter to cover my eyes, because the lights of that place were just so bright. The signs flashing. So I got a couple hours of sleep in, maybe. I had to turn on my radio, put it to white noise, like static, just to drown out the sound of the interstate. But I woke up, probably 4 o'clock in the morning and finished the drive. And when I got to the ramp I wanted to check out, and there were a few people ahead of me that were there. I got there probably 7 o'clock or so on Sunday morning. And we all launched together. I bumped into a couple of people I knew from social media, and finally got to meet them. And then I just spent the rest of the day just cruising around this creek arm in Main Lake area, just exploring. I had a couple smallmouth bass actually up really shallow come up and hit my chatterbait and break the tail off of it. So I'm like, that's kind of what like a spawning bass would do, like a small spawning bass. And when eating it, they just want to get it out of the way. So, everything that happens for a reason. You got to kind of put all the puzzle pieces together. And maybe that was one of the first puzzle pieces. I don't know. But yeah, as soon as I got to the juice spot I wanted that morning, I threw a spinnerbait out. I was reeling it back in, and the craziest thing happened is that path that spinnerbait took, not like 3 feet behind it. I must have stirred up some shad or something, because like an 18-inch smallmouth jumped out of the water, completely out of the water, right beside my kayak. I'm like, why did it not eat my spinnerbait? I'm like, I don't know. It should have, really. I mean, if it was eating something else that jumped out of the water. So I'm like, I was planning to throw a spinnerbait a lot. And apparently that's what a lot of people tried and wanted to try. But that was never a player for me. And again, a puzzle piece. Maybe that's something
Yep.
something I added, and I put that away pretty quick.
Something
But,
eliminated, right?
yeah, just
Yeah.
eliminating stuff or putting the pieces together. Like every interaction on the water, every like even the birds flying around. You know, if the animals are active in the morning, those are all little clues to tell you what kind of mood that the fish are in. And I fished around for a little bit more. I never even boated a fish, bumped into a couple more friends. You know, I was taking it pretty easy. There's a couple spots on the main lake I was trying to get to, but with the wind and the amount of boat tournaments that were going on, I couldn't really get to those offshore spots. And I said, it's not worth it. Um, I'm running on a couple hours of sleep. I'm exhausted. The B&B's open. I'm just going to pack it up. I'm going to head back to the B&B and get some rest. So that's what I did. Because when you get to the B&B, it's not over. You got to unpack everything and prep your gear for the next day. Get food in you. You know, call everybody. Say, hey, I made it. And you know, it's just nonstop from the time the tournament starts. So I wanted to make sure I got some rest that day.
Well, rest is just as important as everything else, because if you're not on the top of your game, you can miss that slight half second, the ability to make that hook set. I mean, you're tired, and then you realize, hey, that's a bite. Your mindset, your awareness. I mean, it matters. So.
Yeah, so on Monday, the next day, I got up. I think it was really cold that morning. I think my roommates and I from Maryland, Alan Hurt and Mark Nelson, when we just kind of slept in just a little bit, and we sat around, had coffee at 7 a.m. and just waited for everything to thaw out. You know, our
Right.
rudders were frozen on our kayaks, so it didn't make much sense to go out super early. So we got the rest there, and one Sunday, I had looked at the spot that I had mapped the most. I found the most stuff that I thought was really good looking. And I went there and I fished it, and I didn't much care for it. So I moved on to another spot on Monday, and I put it around. I fished all day. I didn't find a whole lot. I think I mostly ran different ramps and just took a look at what they look like. And I was also making a backup plan in my head, just looking at going to different marinas and looking behind the marinas, like, can I get in there if I need to? Can I sneak under those cables and fish back there if I need a plan C or a plan D to try to get a limit?
And I know you had those plans.
Mm-hmm.
I know you did. You probably had a plan double Z.
And then at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, I'm going to make one last run to this one marina and just see how many people are there. It was a big creek, and I'm like, there could be a lot of people in there, and I can write it off like it's going to be just too many people back in there to be something worthwhile on tournament day. So I ran there. I got there. Like, there's a lot of people here, but there's no one right around. I'm going to just launch here real quick. I got a couple hours before it starts to get kind of dark. So I launched and I went up the creek, and there were a couple people in there with me, and it was super windy. It was windy practically the entire time we were there. That's the way the Midwest is. I found I was throwing a big mag draft, just trying to see if I can get a bigger bite or a big follow. And in this one particular spot back up in this creek, I threw in there, and within a couple cranks of the reel, hooked into a 17-incher, and she had choked it and actually raked her gills a little bit. And it took me a little while to get her unhooked, unfortunately. She might be okay. It's so hard to tell when you get their gills, but I got her back in the water. I feel really bad about it, but that's a fish I could use on tournament day.
Yeah.
That's it. That was a solid fish. Come day one and day two, that 17-incher could have really helped somebody. So I tossed her back, and on my graph, I saw all kinds of shad and all kinds of fish underneath me. I'm like, okay, there's some life here. Okay. And then there's other people in the area too, so I'm probably not the only one. And then I was like, okay, it's getting late. I'm just going to blow with the wind back down the bank. And I took that spinner bait and just was flinging it around. Ended up catching a small, like 13-inch bass. But the first thing I noticed when I boat flipped him and grabbed him was that he was super sticky. and he was actually starting to peel me. And usually that indicates that they're on bed or they're really close to bedding down. And the water temp's only 56 degrees, 58 degrees. And I had heard that there were some smallmouth beds, and they usually spawn first. I'm like, man, this is the type of creek where some largemouth could go up in. And I caught that big 17-incher way up there, dirt shallow, big belly. I caught this one that's peeing. Those two smallmouth that I caught the day before, had bite the day before, they were up shallow. So like, they might be thinking about it. And I was also, another thing to study was the water level. That's something I've been trying to get in the habit of doing in the last year, is watching water levels and current flow from the dams. So there had been some rain a few days before, and the lake was actually rising during practice. And I think that's one reason why those fish had moved up there shallow. But after that fish catch, it kind of gave me another clue to go off of, and I left for the day. And then on the last day, Tuesday, I guess it was. It was still cold in the morning, so I didn't get a super early start. But I launched and I tried to fish some main lake stuff that I wanted to check out, see if I could find some big smallmouth. And it was so windy, smashing into that bank, throwing a big mag draft and a big glide bait. I thought, man, in a certain condition, these fish would absolutely smoke this. But I never got a bite. And I fished a couple coves, only saw a couple little balls of shad back in there. I'm like, I don't know, man. And it was the last day of practice. I was getting kind of tired. The amount of wind that was blowing, like 20-mile-an-hour gusts on a big lake like that, it was getting a little sketchy, even in that Feelfree Dorado. I actually was pedaling most of the time, so I could control it a little bit better than with the motor.
Right.
But by 11 o'clock, I was like, I think I'm going to go back to that place where I caught that peeing bass, because if there's one back there, there's going to be more that are in that mode to be up in that creek. So I left early on the last day of practice. I cut out the last few hours. I mailed it in. I took my chances going back across the lake with the wind blowing me at my back and taking waves over the side. Yeah, it was sketchy, and I was glad to be back at the ramp on the last day of practice. And I went back to the B&B, and I took a nap. And I had no idea what I was going to do. All that map study that I did. I eliminated almost all of it, all the waypoints, everything. I hit all the spots I wanted to that I could get to, with the wind being such a problem. Honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do the next day. I had all those waypoints, and we're going back to, I told you we're going to circle back about, all this studying stuff. But
Right.
I'm going back to Zalzbane saying, you gotta focus on, you got to listen to the fish and not to your research necessarily. You can't get into a mindset of, I have to hit these waypoints because I spent the time to put them on a computer. Like the computer doesn't let fish.
That's a great point.
So even before the tournament, looking at all the waypoints I had on my mapping, I was like, driving down there every night at the B&B, I was constantly second guessing myself. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go here? Going to go there? And then I'll be like leaving the B&B to practice, and I'll change my mind. I'll go somewhere else. But ultimately, I decided to listen to what the fish were telling me, and I launched where I caught that the peeing bass in the 117-inch.
Yep.
I had 0 waypoints of that place. 0. I didn't even look at it on the map because I just assumed that it would be too many people and it wasn't worth my time. I didn't even bother with it.
Well, that's something that I want to touch on, because you came around and we got to talk at the expo, and I'm gonna let you touch on that, but I want to do something here real quick, and but keep that in mind, and you know where I'm going, and that's your ledge, the money ledge.
Feelfree Kayaks. Paddle, pedal, or power. something for everyone. DuBro Fishing, marine products for fresh or saltwater adventures. ZPRO Lithium, serious power for serious anglers. Big Lake Bait Company, Texas's #1 custom soft plastics.
But I didn't mean to cut you off there. But yeah, we were talking about at the expo. You know, you were talking about your 2 days. So you've just went over some of the studying, and then you talked about what you did after you studied. You went and checked out all those locations that you marked. You learned a lot about everything, but you know, going home after, you know, taking a nap, relaxing, what decision did you come to that led you to day one?
Well, John, I just I knew where I caught fish. That was the only 2 fish I caught all in practice, and they were setting up in a way that I thought would make them more catchable if they were spawning. I could go up shallow and catch a few. The water was actually getting hotter. It was like 58 degrees, 59 degrees the last day of practice. Some places it was actually warmer in the lake, but where I was at, that's where it was at. And I was like, I've got nothing else. I'm just going to go out early in the morning, throw a buzz bait around up shallow and see what I can make happen. So I got there to the ramp. I was the first one. I was there super early. I guess I'm a little neurotic in that way, but I was there at like 4:30, and I got all settled in. I took a nap, and then I got some breakfast in me, a monster, and I was ready to go, man.
To be young again.
I Yeah, we launched, and I raced up the creek with 2 other guys. To my surprise, I figured more would go up there. A lot of people went out to the main lake, and I got the spot that I wanted. I was really concerned that I wouldn't get the spot because it was very particular back up in the creek. And within probably 3 minutes, I caught a 15-incher on a buzzbait. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the deal. And there's all kinds of shad busting around and white bass and probably some small bass too. I ended up catching a couple smaller bass on a little swim bait. They were 11 3/4 inches. I'm like, I don't know, man. Those are pretty small fish. Those are the bucks up here. And I noticed that morning I looked at the water, what the water is doing, and the water was actually dropping. They were dropping the water in anticipation for rain later in the week. And I don't know. I think they might be pulling out. I don't think they're going to be back up in here. But I was also thinking, you got to stick to it. You got to keep grinding away, and you'll figure them out back up here shallow. So I spent probably 5.5 hours up in that creek, just beating the bank. And I was almost by myself. I think there's one other guy eventually, and I had nothing.
So with this technique that you were doing, we can tell everybody pretty much that this was off instinct. You weren't using sonar or anything like that. You were fishing ledges, points, and stuff that you had studied from your maps and from what you had learned up there in practice.
Yeah. It's I knew I had to go somewhere, and I knew the fish weren't up there anymore. So where do they go when they try to spawn and the conditions aren't quite right? They pull back out to that first main point that has some depth to it. So I pulled back off and I went around the corner, and I'm just like, please nobody be there, please nobody be there, because I saw people in practice on that spot, wide open, nobody around, just 2 geese on a nest, and they did not like me being around. But I used I knew the conditions. It was kind of windy, bluebird skies, and I felt like I needed to get bites. So I didn't want to tie on a Ned rig, but what I had and what I learned, I've used it before, but just like a Kayak, a small Kayak, a 3.3 on an 8-pound spot head jig. And I just threw it out there because the Kayak's so soft that its tail paddles, whenever it's moved in the slightest bit. Other plastics don't really do that. They can be too stiff, too hard. And I wanted something that would kick on the way down on a little ball head jig. So there's this long point that came out. I cast it to it. I'm like, actually, I saw it with my coasters. I didn't even really notice it on my mapping software. I just saw it with my coasters in the bright sunshine. I'm like, well, I can see it's pretty shallow way out there. Like, there's got to be fish on it. So I cast it out there, and almost immediately my boat up with that Kayak, and it was a 16-inch smallmouth bass. And when I was reeling it in, there was a bigger one right behind it. I'm like, this is it. They are here and they want to eat. So about 10 minutes later, I move around on the point to get a different casting angle, and I threw it up there. Loads up again. It was that 17.5-inch smallmouth. It looked like the one that was chasing the other one, and I got that one in the net. I'm like, yep, let's
Awesome.
go. We got something figured out. We got 3 good fish, and let's catch 2 more, and I'll be happy. I was just trying to salvage the day. I had to stay in contention. So for the last 2 hours of the tournament, I stayed on that long point, and I was just dragging that ball head jig on the bottom. I would raise my rod tip up really high, and it would make it dart up a couple feet, and it would just glide back down. And they wouldn't eat it when it was swimming. It had to be sitting on the bottom, and you would feel them tap it, and you load into them. I ended up catching a couple 16s and a 20-inch largemouth that was actually spawned out. She had bite marks all over her belly, and she was absolutely skinny, which indicates that the males were biting at her belly to get her to release her eggs.
Right,
So,
right.
They are using this point to move up into the creek, or if they've already spawned, they're going out. So they have to be around this area, and they're going to be on day 2. And going into day 2, I was just like, please still be there, and please let me get to that spot first. If I can have this spot to myself, I have a chance. I ended day 1 and 17.
That's what.
17.
So you were after day 1, 169 anglers or ish 60. You were 17th place. Yeah. So 17th place going into day 2.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your mindset when you finished up day 1? What were you thinking for the plan for day 2?
Well, I looked at the water. I was watching it like a hawk, and it kept falling throughout the night. And when I even got there at 4:30 in the morning, I knew the water was going to keep going down. So I thought, it might even improve the bite if it's still going down. They may still be on that point pretty good. Now, I was the first one at the ramp again, and I wanted to make sure I positioned my kayak at the ramp where I had the best straight shot to this point. And I also made it a point where everyone saw me out there the day before, just to make my presence known. And no one else came to point. I was the first one there, and it wasn't that far from the ramp. And I sat there for 25 minutes, with all these thoughts racing through my head and fish just jumping around me, and I was dying with anticipation. I had to take a moment and take a few breaths, and actually turned around and looked at the sunset to kind of ground myself. And when it was lined in, I was ready to go.
So how long did it take before you had your first bite?
Probably 60 seconds. I kept that ball head jig, and I just threw it in there and just let it drop to the bottom. And I loaded up on, I believe it was a smallmouth. It was still kind of dark. It jumped out of the water, threw the hook, and I was like, oh, no, I know I wanted to start. But I knew from sitting there for 25 minutes, I could see all the fish and all the bait swimming underneath me with my 2D sonar. And I, like you mentioned, like you alluded to, I don't have forward-facing sonar. My side imaging is broke. I think side imaging would have been great. So I just had 2D to go off of, and I could see all this fish swimming around there like I did on day 1. So I knew they were in there, and I just had to keep fishing, and there were some big ones in there too. So I caught some 16s and 20s and 17s, and not a couple minutes later, I hooked into a 18 3/4-inch smallmouth, and it dug like a catfish. I could not move it. You would think it would jump, come up and jump.
Right.
But I was talking to Philip Backus, and he was saying the smallmouth that he caught, they did the exact same thing. They just dig, and you can't move them. But just being patient and taking breaths while you're fighting them, not getting in your head, really helped me to land those fish and not panic. So I actually only had 4 fish after an hour. I lost another one, and then about 8:30, 9 o'clock, I ended up catching a largemouth for my 5th fish, and I kissed that fish. I'm like, 2 days of a limit in a big tournament. I am just so happy, and they were good fish too.
So after that hour and a half, you had another 6 hour, 5.5, 6 hours left into the day. How many upgrades did you make over those first 5 fish?
I made 3 more upgrades. It was pretty slow. I'll get a small bite here and there for the rest of the day, and I could see on my graph my mapping software on the graph that this point actually goes way further out in the creek than I really even bothered to look day one. Day one, it was all about one specific spot where they all were at. But I think with the water falling, they actually pulled off even further and got on the ledge side of the creek. Like they were out even deeper. And when I started exploring out there, there's a hump out there and a ledge. I saw them all stacked on there. I see just these huge balls of shad that would take up my entire 2D sonar. And I ended up actually hooking into a good one that was digging again. And I lost that fish and I was sick to my stomach. Like, man, that was a good one. I threw back in there, I said, there's other ones in here. Threw out, and I hooked into a 16-inch spotted bass that stayed in my limit for the rest of the day. And then I'm like, okay, they're not on that point as much anymore. They're out a little bit deeper, so I'm going to have to go out and find them out here. So I spent the rest of the day flipping that ball head jig out there on that ledge, and I was sitting in 30 to 40 feet of water, casting up to about 10, and working that ball head jig down through the bait balls. And what I realized by the end of the day, it started getting dark, starting to get cloudy in like the last 2 hours. Dark and cloudy and windier, and that bite for that ball head jig died off. I noticed
that front was starting to move in. That really affected the main event. So
those balls of shad started coming up off the bottom more than they were. They were pretty close to the bottom before, but now they're in like the middle of the water column. And the bass were there with them, and white bass, and they were drowning the mix then. So I'm like, okay, I got to pull something out of my butt here. What do I always do in tournaments to find my kicker fish? And it's been jerk baits. And I've never really considered, the jerk baits to be a big strength of mine, but I'm always like, man, I catch big fish when I'm in tournaments. So I tied on a Mega Bass 110 Junior in clown color. I actually have it right here. And it's about the size of that bait, but it doesn't dive too deep. It stayed above the shad because the bass like to eat up. I was working it fast. I wasn't getting very many pauses at all. And I almost had my rod ripped out of my hands by this one bass. It jumped immediately out of the water. It jumped, I'm not kidding, like 2.5 feet out of the water. Wow. It was almost at eye level, and I was sitting down. And it gave me a good fight for a while. Eventually I netted them, and it was an 18.5 largemouth. Now, wrap your head around that. Like the largemouth are jumping wild out of the water, and the smallmouth dig. Like that hits the opposite from, of
fighting like a mad smallmouth is a big old
So and I made 2 more calls with the jerk bait throughout the day and got those in.
Well, you had a great event. Obviously, you made the top 7. But what are your thoughts if you could have fished clean?
I try not to get my head about it. Like I talked to all those guys backstage, and we all lost fish. All of us in the top 10, we all had a legitimate chance of maybe not winning, but getting one of those blue trophies.
Right.
I lost 2. If the 2 I caught were 18 inchers, I still may not have had enough for a third. But if one of them was a 20, maybe. I lost, broke one off on day one. That would have been nice to have. But you gotta learn to fish clean, or you have to have the numbers to fish.
Yep. Well, brother, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight and giving us a little insight, knowledge, and telling us about your experience. I mean, it must have been felt really good to be on that stage right there, and those crowds were big.
Yeah,
those crowds were big, out there for us, and I was really tickled to see you. I watched it live. Shout out to Dwayne Wally for sitting right up close, and he had his phone up, so I got to watch everything live from my booth and got to experience those dimples, man. You were rocking those dimples when you were up there. Big smile, and but all of us here from West Virginia appreciate you representing us and doing it with class. And thank you again for taking time to come and talk to me tonight and giving us your experience.
It's always a pleasure, John, and you know, I like to represent West Virginia and my friends, and I'm just so glad. You know, it means a lot to me to get that trophy, that check. But I also know how much it means to everyone, all my friends, all my coworkers. You know, as corny as it sounds, and I'm glad to do that for you all. You know, that makes me excited. That's what fuels me. I want to do that, and I want to do it more.
Yes, I want to see you do it more. But and hey, looking forward to tomorrow's photographs. I'm really going to be pulling for you to pull in a 50-inch muskie.
Yeah, we're gonna go out and we're gonna try. I want him to get one really, because he's gonna be in that little Moken, and if he gets into a 50-inch, he is gonna die.
It's going to
He
be
is gonna
surf school.
die.
Yeah. Well, buddy, I'll let
Yeah,
you go again. Thank you, man, for coming on the show, and be blessed, my friend.
thank you. Take care.
All right. Hey, guys, appreciate you guys tuning in tonight to the Rusty Hook here on the Paddle Fin. We're streaming on 4 different broadcast platforms. We're streaming in West Virginia, Illinois, out in Colorado. We're on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the show, to Paddle and Fin, and appreciate everybody tuning in. Especially good to see one of the greatest, the champ, old school Matt Ball. Appreciate you logging in and checking out. Mark Edwards, Elvis Lee, Brian McClung, Buddy Vance, Colton Williams, Justin Norton, Sierra Backus, Michael Ridenour, Blaine Winters, Daniel Woodcock, Gillespie, Butcher, all you guys, Nicholas Beltron, everybody, thank you for making the show interactive and fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to just remind everybody again, make sure you come and look up a month from now, Del Holly Eastport Marina. And if you're new into kayak fishing and you're happen to be watching the show, make sure you go check out the Paddle and Fins Noobs page. We do a online, very low cost, effective way to learn how to kayak fish and tournament fish at Paddle and Fin. It's Paddle and Fin Noobs. Anyway, we'll sign off, let you guys go. Make sure you always wear your PFD. And as Kyle mentioned, water temps are rising, but hypothermia is still a serious thing that we need to pay attention to. Dress appropriately, always be safe, and make sure that you let your family and friends know your routes, where you're going, and where you'll be. Want to sign out now? Nothing but love. Be blessed.